Yeah. I can hear myself. Is it recording?
Yeah.
Is it? Okay, the reason why I asked...
fancy.
Yeah, right?
Now I know what Joe Rogan talks about.
Yeah. Now, a good key that we've been noticing is that because you can hear yourself,
Yeah.
okay, a lot of people have been talking like this.
Okay. I don't have a problem talking loudly, I don't
Yeah.
think.
So what I've been telling some people is go one ear like this, one ear like that, or you just got to know that like because of video, be expressive.
Cool.
Don't be afraid to yell in this thing.
So trippy.
You can hear them in your ears?
Oh, yeah.
Cody?
Yeah, I can hear you better than I can
So
hear
like
me.
literally
anyways.
go like, because you got to go here.
Cool.
There
you go.
Yeah.
Cool.
So keep it that close.
So trippy.
Okay. Another thing is I was watching like a late night talk show with Stephen Colbert and this like legend CNN reporter. Fucking forget his name now. And he said the best part of an interview is before you start.
It's the banter.
The 2 minutes before you start and the 2 minutes when you finish. So I've been telling Valentina, press record as soon as people get into the building.
Love that.
What'd she do today? Didn't press. We'll get there.
Valentina, come on.
For those listening at home, Valentina, she's learning. She's learning still. She's an icon, but she's still learning the technicalities of this business. We'll get you there.
Yeah.
I said that Valentina is going to become a wise investor
Love it.
after doing all of this.
I mean, honestly, it's perfect for you because you can just hang out and
Learn.
Hang
out and learn because learning is cool.
I'm going to Vegas next week, so I'm like,
Yeah.
so I'm like brushing up on my poker. So I'm watching.
Is that for the conference that you're going to?
No, bachelor party. 20 guys in
Oh.
Vegas.
Holy shit, that sounds expensive.
Yeah, so we're doing a house poker tournament between the 20 guys. So I've been like rewatching poker highlights.
Oh,
and,
nice. Yeah, nice.
One of like the poker girl, like promo girls, she ended up competing in a tournament because she just watched so much poker being there live all the time. She ended up crushing it. So
There you go.
It's
Valentina's going to be a future millionaire.
love it.
You know what the key is, Valentina? It's not like I've been doing this, like I've been working in finance since I was 18 years old, and not like finance, institutional, blah, 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 but retail finance. So like the amount of cases of people that I've seen come into the bank that I've worked with, I get to see their income, their job, their temperament, how they treat the teller is a big indication of someone is like, of someone's success, in my opinion.
I love that.
And so it's been thousands, not hundreds, thousands. Okay. And I've developed like this ability to be able to look somebody up and down and see how they treat like someone on the street or the taxi driver or whatever. And I know how much they're worth.
I love that. That's
so like
amazing.
A pretty good degree of like certainty. Okay. Because we used to play that game all the time. Be like, oh, how much you think they're worth? And you could literally just check.
Oh, that's a fun game.
Yeah.
I feel like that's something the bank doesn't want people to know publicly.
No, that's okay.
They don't care.
Because they want us to know every single client. It's called KYC, know your client.
Cool.
For like anti-money laundering and like making sure they're not doing drug money. So they would teach you when someone walks up to the bank. So you walk up, you put your card in, 3 little hotkeys. I know exactly who you are, where you live, what you do for a living, how much you make, and what your last 10 transactions were.
Crazy.
So while you're putting in your PIN, oh, fuck, wrong PIN, sorry. Oh, took it out too early.
Yeah.
By the time you're done that, I know all that about you.
That's crazy.
And then how you interact with me also tells me a little bit about you as well.
Yeah.
And think about that. I was a teller for 3.5 years. So maybe 50 to 150 people. Probably like 150 to 500 people a week I saw.
Yeah, easily. That's crazy.
For 3.5 years.
Yeah.
That's how the repetition is what kind of like builds that. And what I noticed, okay, is that everybody in their life has a period of time where they make a fuck ton of money. Everybody. It's going to come for you. One day you're just going to be like, what do I do with all this money? Everybody.
I'm so rich.
Yeah. No, you won't. There's a difference, though,
Yeah.
between being rich and wealthy. So everyone has that period of time where they make a lot of money and they're rich. The difference between the people that are rich and the people that are wealthy is that the people that when they get that period of time where they make a lot of money, they're like ready for it. They know personal finance. They don't make stupid decisions. They're emotionally intelligent. They understand, like, you know, the thing where it's like have the mushroom now, not the mushroom, the marshmallow now or 2 marshmallows later.
Yeah.
They wait for the 2 marshmallows later. And those are the people that stay rich. That's the key. And that's what I hope. That's why I do this fucking podcast, so that people learn a thing or two. And you're a good example of that, actually.
I do my best.
You are.
Yeah. One of my favorite things you told me, I don't know, a couple years ago, and it was always funny. You're like, the people who you least expect to have the most amount of money in their bank account don't look like they have the most. And then the people who are in overdraft are like rocking the Gucci belts and like, the overly patterned, Supreme t-shirt or whatever it is.
100%. Because
it's flex money. Well, it's even funny looking at the first time you and I sat down. It wasn't even a podcast, but it was like a conversation.
Yeah.
Full suit.
Well, that was a podcast.
Yeah, it was just like a shorter version of it.
Yeah.
But it was full suit. I was like, oh my God, like I got to dress the part. And I was
Right.
like, this is what I wear to see clients. It's
Exactly,
like,
right? We've come a long way since then. I think that was like...
It's my second year in real estate.
2017?
It was. Yeah, crazy.
Was that your second year? Did I nail it? Yeah, 2017.
Absolutely
I think
bang
it
on.
was.
Yeah.
And we did it at
Love Child.
Love Child. Yeah.
Social. Yeah, whatever
it's called Love Child.
There you go.
But what was it called?
It used to be the Hoxton nightclub.
Hoxton. And then, it's called Love Child.
Love Child Social, I think.
And during the day, it was a co-working space.
Yep.
And then at nighttime, it was like the club.
Yeah,
And we did it
exactly.
there because I had a membership there.
Yeah. Here we are.
5 years later.
Now look at the backdrop. We're fancy here.
Fuck.
I love it.
Okay, let's get going.
Beauty.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of What They Did Not Teach You in School. Today we have a very special guest, someone that I've known for a long time, Cody Skrzypkowski. He was actually probably on my first 15 episodes of the podcast, and now we're going full circle right now. We're a little bit wiser. We got a 3 at the beginning of our age. So
crazy.
That's a trip. Thanks for being on today.
It's my pleasure, man. Love getting to hang out with you and shoot the shit. So
Beauty.
very welcome.
Before I do introductions, I want to take a moment for our sponsors.
That actually wasn't planned to. That's hilarious.
Today's episode is sponsored by Creator Club Studios. Creator Club is a platform to connect brands with content creators so that you could scale your content creation and your marketing efforts with ease. That's Creator Club Studios. Thank you. They're the ones doing all this. Valentina right there. She works for them. She's literally going to snap my neck if I didn't do that. So there you go. That's over.
There we go.
So today on the podcast, we got Cody Skrzypkowski. Like I said, I've known him for a long time. We actually connected by Amy.
Yep. Shout out Amy.
And Amy connected me through a mentor of mine, an accountant that I grew up, and he kind of like taught me a lot. And just it's funny how one connection can lead to
Crazy. It's all
a
about who
pretty
you
long
know.
friendship, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm going to read Cody's bio here. Cody joined one of the largest real estate companies in the world, Keller Williams, and partnered with one of the top real estate teams in Canada in 2016, North Group. It was called something else back then.
At the time we were Urban Lifestyle Group.
Pretty crazy. He joined North Group as a sales representative and will have all the resources and support of that team. That's how he got kicked off. And prior to becoming a realtor, you served at Gusto,
Correct.
The Keg, and Mamakas.
You got it.
All at the same time?
Gusto and Mamakas was at the same time. I would do Monday to Friday lunches at Gusto, Monday to Thursday nights Mamakas, and then on the weekends study for my real estate license.
Hey, that's pretty sick. Those are top tier restaurants.
They're great. Yeah, they're still love my favorite. Shout out Gusto and Mamakas.
Mamakas is like legit one of my favorite restaurants.
It's in my top 3, easy.
I've been there like probably 15, 20 times this year.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
they take too much of my money.
Wow.
That's another conversation. So you were in like hospitality, restaurant, that kind of thing. What made you want to get into real estate?
So it's kind of, my path is a little bit unusual, I think, for a lot of people in their sort of early to mid 20s. I actually went, initially, I'll kind of backtrack a little bit. I went to Carleton University at 17 at a high school, dropped out of that within like the first 2 months, just 17 years old, in for psychology for the sake of going because everybody was going. Realized very quickly that wasn't my style, so took the rest of the year off. And then I went to St. Lawrence College in Kingston, did a 3-year diploma, took a year off and traveled, went back, did another diploma, which was supposed to springboard me into commerce in Toronto. I just think, I need to have a university degree. So moved to Toronto to go to Ryerson. 2 weeks in, I was like, this is not for me at all. So I dropped out again. And at this point, I think I was 24, I want to say, something like that. And I fell back on what I knew, which was hospitality. So worked a few sort of, less desirable restaurant jobs. And I had a conversation with my mom. She's like, you always talked about getting into real estate when you were 15, HGTV shows and all that. Ryan
Really?
Serhant selling $1 million listing. And so I thought, yeah, you know what? There's something more career driven that kind of is applicable to the restaurant scene. So yeah, I worked those 2 jobs like I just said, and got my license. And 6.5 years later, here we are.
Holy.
Yeah.
Is there a lot of carryover? Like what? Clearly you weren't like school wasn't your thing.
School, yeah. I liked college because
Yeah.
it was more social and less reading. I'm not a big reader, which I wish I was, but I've just come to
The
realize
amount
that.
of books that I've bought Cody, just
Yeah.
collect and dust probably.
Yeah, can confirm. Yeah, 100%. I set a goal for myself every year. It's like I'm pretty good at hitting my goals.
Yeah.
It's the one goal that I've just come to realize now at this point, just not a reader.
That's all right.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, so that's why university wasn't for me.
Yeah. And then what pulled you into like hospitality? I guess that social aspect.
Social, I loved the idea of being able to translate your work ethic into compensation. So work hard, get a good tip. Know your product, get a good tip. So to kind of answer your question, there are a lot of transfer over skills from the service industry that relate to real estate. You're just dealing with a different price point, obviously, and a different product, but
Bigger tips.
bigger tips. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you started off in real estate. That must have been a grind. I know a lot of people, like they say, first year is the hardest, right?
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about your journey in your first year.
Yeah. So for me, I did a ton of due diligence leading up to getting my license or while I was getting my license. So I interviewed about 4 or 5 brokerages maybe. And I knew for me, I wanted to partner or lean into a team that had really good experience within the industry, but then also somebody who I kind of jived with. So that's when I met Amy Youngren through Sarah Locken, who's still, the 3 of us are still rocking it with North Group today, a little bigger since then. And I joined that sort of group, or the 2 of them, because of the experience that they had, the mentorship that they offered. And the first year was fun, overwhelming, exciting, all at the same time. Yeah, it was, I started in March of 2016. And then the first 9 months was just like hitting the ground running, learning the city, because I'm from Ottawa originally.
Yeah, so you had no warm market, right?
Nothing. So I knew for me, I was like, I need to lean into somebody or a team or a great brokerage, because at the end of the day, like I honestly used to think north of Bloor was like really far apart of Toronto. Like I was like, oh my God, they're north of Bloor. Like, holy shit, that's so far. And so leaning into mentorship that basically helped kind of curate where I wanted to be within the first sort of 9 months. And it just kind of blew up from there.
So I'm gonna ask these questions. So we're open here. I know you're pretty open about it.
100%.
So talk to me like how much you make in your first year.
Yep.
And what was that? Is that what you expected? And how did you get there?
So yeah, more than happy to chat about it. I think it's in our industry in real estate, it's something that's very widely talked about.
Yeah.
Sometimes in a good way, sometimes it's a little toxic. My first year, so I remember sitting down in an interview with Amy thinking, okay, because I read a blog post about a real estate agent setting expectation that your first year is going to be terrible, you're not going to make any money, and it's going to be pretty lousy. So I went in and she's like, what's your expectation on first year income? And I thought about it and I was like, I would love to make 60K, because I was just thinking, okay,
That's
like,
fair, right?
Entry level job, especially back in 2016. I was like, I want to make more than the national Canadian average, but I was like, I want to also be realistic. And she says, well, that's pretty low. I thought, okay, like 75. She's like, if you don't think you can make more than $100,000 this year, you won't. So she's like, let's make it a 6-figure year. And I thought, okay, wow, like amazing. Kind of like, it shaped my mind right off like day one. I don't even think I had my license at that point. I was like, okay, this is a 6-figure thing coming up. So my first year I made 125.
Ooh.
Not bad.
Not bad at all. So how did you do that? Because that's pretty difficult to do.
Yeah. So leases for sure. So my first 9 months I did, I think, just over 50 leases. So for the realtors who are listening, they know that leases are not as glamorous, and they're arguably more work than if you're actually selling a property either on the buy or the listing side. So 50 leases, I probably submit like 90 to 100 offers. So learn the hard way. And then I think I did my first buyer deal at like the 9-month mark and slowly transitioned from
Because
there.
leases lead up to that kind of thing, right?
100%.
So was it? So what do you think deters people from that? Because a lot of people think, okay, 50 leases, yeah, you probably had to submit like, what did you say it was, 150?
Probably like 90 to 100 offers.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what I was, like, it's not that I didn't know what I was doing. It was just, you know, you learn the hard lessons.
They're going to accept everything as well, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a grind.
It
That's
was.
like 10 a month that you're submitting.
Pretty
right?
much. Yeah.
So a lot of realtors don't want to work that hard, or they're trying to focus on other things. Like, what made you do that? That's not the norm.
So it was kind of threefold. Number one, agents don't like to do it because it's not sexy. We're not as sexy as selling a $3 million property.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work for, in the grand scheme of things, a small amount of payout.
Yeah.
But for me, I was looking at it, I was like, okay, I don't know this city. And so if I'm going to, like, it was almost like the imposter syndrome at the time. I was like, I don't feel comfortable trying to get people to buy a, $2 million property when I don't even know what I'm selling. Like, I don't know the building, the developer, the area. So leases was a really good lens into learning the city. And so for
I was
me,
going to say, you probably were all over the city
Yeah.
to do that many leases.
100%.
You learned a lot, probably.
Yeah, and now I know almost every building, who the developer is, how old the building is, what the amenities are, what the average price per square foot is. And so that really like opened my eyes into the condo market. And then I kind of transitioned from there.
Okay. What advice do you have for realtors starting off in their first year?
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
So I'm going to look at the camera, and this is like a very intent message here.
Do it.
So I would say there's three things. But the biggest one is kind of to what I had mentioned earlier on with North Group, Urban Lifestyle Group. Either find an amazing brokerage, find an amazing team or an amazing mentor, somebody who is going to be there to kind of walk you through the hard times of this business, because it is a very lonely business if you run it on your own. So find those sort of three dynamics, whether it be a team, a specific sort of more senior agent, or an amazing brokerage. Lean into their training, lean into their systems, lean into their mentorship, because at the end of the day, you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. And if you find somebody who's successful in this business, they're, for the most part, doing something right. So find those people and lean into it, and be prepared to, do the work, especially early. Like, I didn't love doing leases, especially like the 6 to 12 month mark. I didn't love them, but like I still 6.5 years later, I'll do 10 to 12 a year because it's just good business.
Yeah.
So
love that.
That would be my advice.
When I first started off in consulting, I remember a mentor of mine, he said, you're gonna want to quit every other day. Yeah. But then eventually you'll want to quit every week, and then every month. And now I'm at I feel like I want to quit every quarter.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And
Yeah.
you got to be accepting of that. But the people that you have around you, that when you're having that bad day,
Yeah.
be stand you up, dust you off, give you a little pat on the butt and keep you going.
100%.
Those are the people that are important, especially
Yeah.
on the bad days.
Could not agree more.
And when I was there, it was my parents, they were really supportive. My business partner at the time, Daniel, he was really supportive. And now today, the business partners and mentors that I have around me keep me going during those hard times, right?
Yeah.
So finding a team to lean on in your first 1 or 2 years, I think that's important.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so how did you break through that plateau now? You did 50, you're heading into year 2. You
Yeah.
must have thought, okay, am I going to do another 50 leases, or what's the game plan? How did you break through that first plateau?
That is exactly what I thought. So I was sitting there being like, okay, I can do this, and I was getting better at them. So the pre-qualifying was becoming a little bit more efficient.
Yeah.
And I remember doing my first buyer transaction. It was a bit of a fluke. It was actually my roommate at the time. It was his colleague, and he's like, hey, this person's looking to buy a property. And I remember, so I showed it to her in the afternoon, and then I worked at Mamaka's that night, and I was in the back room taking phone calls with her, being like, this is how we're going to facilitate this transaction. Meanwhile, calling my mentor, being like, what do I do? And then once that first one went through, I was like, okay. And then I was almost I was hooked in a way. And so it was a conscious decision. I'm like, I'm going to put a bit of a short-term hold on my income through leases, because leases are quick. You can put in an offer, and 2 weeks later, your paycheck comes in when they move in. The sales cycle for a buyer is a month to 3, typically. So I was
sometimes longer, maybe.
100%. Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, this person kind of shifted things for me, both, monetarily, but then also sort of the convenience of not running around all this paperwork with the lease side of things. And so that conscious decision was made. I took a hit on my income for about 2 to 3 months, but I focused exclusively on buyers. Took some time,
So how did you do that? Did you save up some money? You said you were still working at Mamaka's during that time, so that probably smoothed things out.
Yeah, so I did my first buyer deal, and that was my rule with myself was once I do my first buyer deal, I'm going to leave the restaurant industry. And it was when I got paid on it, not when I actually wrote it and had it accepted. And so that was kind of where things shifted. And so I started more intently doing open houses, really leaned into the team's online lead system, called all my tenants who were coming up to that 1 year mark and said, hey, I know you've moved in almost a year ago. Are you planning on staying, or have you considered purchasing a home? And to this day, I've probably done 20 to 30, if not more, transactions with previous tenants. And, some of them I'm helping buy an investment property or the third property or moving up the ladder. So it's really cool to see 6.5 years later, the progression, obviously, with my own business, but then my clients who I'm watching them literally build their wealth through real estate. And it started with a $1,500 lease.
I love that.
Yeah.
And one of the things so I actually read Ryan Serhant's book, Sell It Like Serhant.
I gave
it to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like one of the very few books I read.
It's a great book. There's one chapter called like juggling multiple balls or something like that. And he, in the first sentence, he like giggles about it, like by text. He's like, yeah, I get it. And the entire chapter is about juggling lots of balls.
Yeah, having all the balls in the air.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I actually really like that because you can't just be relying on one deal in order to get you through the year, right? So talk to me a little bit about what your strategy is for having multiple balls in the air at the same time, and maybe some tips that you have for upcoming realtors that find that difficult.
Yeah, so something that I learned somewhat, not recently, in the last kind of 2 to 3 years, is your client can smell what's classically known as commission breath.
Right.
And, you go into like a car dealership, when a sales rep there has a pretty big portfolio of clients and they're not worried about where their next deal is coming from versus, you go in and somebody's like, oh, we'll give you this, or, oh, you should do this, or, oh, you might not get it. It was one of those things where, like, to keep as many balls in the air as possible, I kind of just thought, okay, the more people I talk to, the better it's going to be. And to my point earlier on about still doing leases, I've had clients who I showed up to do a lease and then they're like, we don't want to do this. And then they end up turning around and buying. So it really just comes down to as many people as you talk to, honestly. That's kind of what this business is all about. And maintaining those relationships long term. The tenants that I talked to 6 years ago, hey, how are things? Hey, I know you moved out of the city, but are you planning on coming back? Just honest, organic conversations. And it's a lot easier to have those conversations with people who you've spoken with in the past than it is just, randomly seeing somebody on the street.
100%. But I think that has to do with like that commission breath. I don't know what it is, but you could like actually smell it. You know what I mean?
It's crazy how different it is.
And it's like that, to me, it's confidence. And it's that difference between an abundance and a scarcity mindset that comes with like me and my cousin, we used to always say, like, it's a lot easier to not have commission breath if you have $100K sitting in the bank account. You know?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a way to have an abundance mindset or that like attitude when you actually are living in abundance. The difficult part is when you start off and you're not living in that abundance to like artificially manufacture that abundance mindset. So how do you do that?
So it was like a big fake it till you make it is like when your first year 2, year 3 is typically where it starts to click.
Yeah.
And I've had that conversation with a lot of agents. It's kind of a couple things. I think confidence is the biggest player. And what makes you confident, in my opinion, is knowing your product or knowing what you're selling or leasing. And if you lead with confidence and you know that you can't get attached to the deal, you have to get attached to the overall result for whatever it may be, whether it's somebody waiting but maintaining that relationship, or landing them the perfect place on the first showing. I think it comes down to patience, but then it also just comes down to confidence. And honestly, people will respect you more when you let them feel like they're in charge, whether or not they are or not. Versus if you're like, oh, well, what about these floors? They're amazing. Oh, look at the view. Oh, this kitchen's amazing. Oh, wow, like this isn't going to last long. People don't like that. People don't like being told what to do. So let them lead the charge and then direct the conversation. And it's not to be manipulative. It is honestly to come to an amazing result for the client. And I've come to realize that purchases or sales will come together a lot quicker, a lot more efficiently if you lead that way versus that scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
And it's hard, to your point, to think about in the moment when you're like, oh, like I really need this deal to close or else I don't know how I'm going to pay rent.
Right. Yeah.
But it's just this weird thing where when that shifts, they actually end up like coming together quicker.
Crazy how that works, right?
Backwards mentality.
It's like, I've been doing this for a long time now, and that has been happening more and more and more. And I'm like, oh, where did this go in my first couple years, right? But it's like the rich get richer, and from a mindset perspective, the rich-minded people also get richer.
Yeah.
It's funny how that works.
Yeah. I
Okay,
agree.
let's switch gears a bit now to the present moment. You've been doing this for how long now? 7 years?
Six and a half years. Yeah, March will mark the end of my 6th year, start of 7.
Okay, so talk to me a little bit about what you're seeing the real estate industry. How's it changed from that like first year that you started till now, both like as a realtor, but real estate in Toronto?
Yeah, so I'll start with the realtors side of things. The big one is sort of the presence from a social media standpoint. I think, you know, back in the day, and this is generational, so 20 years ago, it was all cold calls, door knocking, maybe, you know, you adopted early to a website, but it was pretty much like the traditional style of sales. When I first got in, it was definitely that. Used to door knock, hated it. Used to cold call, hated it. Used to sit open houses, hated it. And then social media kind of became a thing, and like really a thing. And then video kind of took off. And then I was having conversations on my phone through an app. And all of a sudden people are like, hey, love that place you just posted. What's the price point? Oh, okay. It's like, are you looking to buy? Well, yeah, but this isn't the area. I'm like, oh, well, I actually service that area as well. So the big thing is like the convenience and the ease of generating leads or clients. That's been a huge shift. And it's been kind of interesting to see even in the last 6 years. I mean, we're kids of the internet era.
Yeah.
And, you know, now I'm talking to agents who are blowing up on TikTok and closing 30 deals a year from TikTok. So it's ever changing on the social side of things. So that's probably the biggest thing I've noticed. On the actual consumer side or the market side, I mean, it goes without saying, the price points. It's wild to see how quickly things have, you know, jumped in the little 6.5 years that I've been around. And just to see kind of the shift on consumer behavior. So it's one of those things where that's remained consistent. When things are crazy, everybody gravitates to it, like we saw in the last 2 years. And when things are slow and you should be buying, nobody jumps into it. So that stayed the same.
Yeah.
But I would say that the big thing that I've noticed, which isn't a positive thing, in my opinion, is the pre-construction space. That's been the biggest change.
Oh, that's true, because everything used to be pre-construction in Toronto, right?
Pre-construction used to be the easiest tool to build wealth in real estate, because everything was sold pre-construction, probably anywhere between $50 to $250 a square foot, more affordable than what was currently on the real estate, the resale market. And then all of a sudden in 2018, 2019, that completely shifted. It was in line, and then eventually way more expensive than the resale market. And so pre-con has changed. That's a large part due to, the economy, cost of labor, cost of goods, red tape from the city, red tape from the province even.
Yeah.
And then because of that, I've noticed quality has started to really, in my opinion, start to shift a little bit. Floor plans are smaller. Quality is not as good. Price is more expensive. They'll throw a condo next to another one, so gone are your views. So I find when you're buying pre-construction nowadays, you have to be really builder specific, very project specific. And I would say put your money more into boutique projects, and especially something that maybe you're prepared to live in or hold really long term, because right now a lot of people are getting burned on assignments, unfortunately.
Boutique? What do you mean by that?
So smaller buildings, maybe 10 stories or less, 15. more reputable developers. They tend to be a little bit more expensive, but you're going to get a better quality product, higher end features and finishes, more functional layout, just more thoughtful development. Whereas, a 75-story tower, you have probably anywhere between 50 to 75 of the exact same floor plan.
Right.
And so in a down market, when you want to go sell that product and 5 or 8 other people hit the market, it's a race to the bottom.
Fair. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, another thing that I want to talk about, because you mentioned price, okay? And I want to caveat this conversation with, obviously, right now, everything that investors are talking about is inflation.
Yeah.
You probably feel it back at home with gas prices and the cost of just like doing anything in this world. Like Chibo, one of my favorite restaurants in the city, Chibo. I used to go there for a plate of pasta in 2015 for like $18.
Yep.
$18.
Yeah. That seems like a steal now.
Right?
Yeah.
Then it was like 22, 23. Okay. Still whatever.
Yeah.
I went there the other day, $30 for my favorite plate of pasta at Chibo.
Twice the
Come
price.
on, guys.
Yeah, pretty much
What's
twice.
going on? What's happening? But we're also seeing it in the real estate market. And I'll say it this, okay? Since 1999, in 1999, probably a condo in Toronto was like 70K, 100K.
1 or 200K maybe.
Yeah. Right. So since then, interest rates have not gone up once since 1991.
That's crazy.
In Canada. Okay. And they've only gone down. The average interest rate, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure it was 8% in 1991. 5 years ago, they were like 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 5 years ago, they were around 3.5 because I bought my first condo 4
There you
years
go.
ago and I was at
There you go.
3.29.
So real estate prices are directly correlated with interest rates.
Yeah.
So if interest rates have only gone down since then, we've seen this boom. But not only that, is Toronto's turned into like
It's the city.
it's a city.
Yeah.
Globally.
Yeah, 100%.
Not just in Canada.
Yeah.
Right? So we've seen all these real estate prices go up. What's happening right now that you're noticing? Like, obviously there's inflation, but what's causing that inflation? And why haven't we seen this like massive drop off in prices yet in real estate? Is it ever going to happen? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a bit of a loaded question because the really hard thing about gauging what's going on in Toronto is we are such a massive city. And so the media loves to blanket statements on what's going on GTA wide. Without question, inflation has had a factor on the real estate market. Everything's more expensive, less disposable income, less likely people are going to want to buy real estate because that just adds to the expense sheet. Interest rates being as low as they were in the last 2 years. I just talked to a client of mine last weekend. He's locked in at 1.29 for 5 years.
Wow.
So that right now you are basically looking at, if you bought a property at the beginning of the year for $1 million at around 1.5 to 2%, it will roughly cost you the exact same amount of money now if you were to buy that property at $800K, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Down payment's different, obviously, so you're going to save some cash on that front. But generally speaking, it's apples to apples, 1 million to 800K.
Yeah.
So
For servicing it on an ongoing basis.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think if you look at GTA wide, if you look at us like the last 2 years, we're still up around 20% in the last 2 years, pricing wise. I think the outskirts of the GTA have seen the biggest shift, but that's also because we saw the biggest shift up.
Right. Yeah.
If you're thinking about the last 2 years, we saw an unsustainable amount of appreciation and just chaos. Honestly, it was
the last 10 years.
correct. Yeah. And so it's one of those things. Eventually, it was going to correct itself. I think the urban communities of Toronto, which is typically what I service, have seen the least effect. Some condos are doing well. Some condos aren't. Some neighborhoods in the East End are doing well. Some aren't. So I think it really comes down to what the consumer is buying, what their sort of affordability is. At the end of the day, real estate is expensive. And now more than ever, people need to be really cautious with what they're buying because we don't know what's going to happen with interest rates. They may go up even more. We don't know.
Stay tuned. I'll have you on in 2 years from now, all right?
Let's chat.
Okay. So in our first episode, we talked a lot, and leading up till now, this whole thing about like Airbnb arbitrage or just buying Airbnb properties.
Yep.
I know you have an Airbnb property.
I do.
So why don't you talk to us a little bit about what motivated you to do that? what that first Airbnb property looked like
Yep.
and like how it's turned out so far.
Yeah. So it actually starts 4 years ago when I bought my first condo. I was living in a rental at the time, bought a condo with the intention of keeping it as a rental property. Because I couldn't afford what I wanted to live in, but I knew as a real estate agent especially, A, I knew it was a good investment, but B, it helped me level up to practice what I preach.
I love that. Yeah, because buy where you could afford, invest where you could afford, live where you want to from a lifestyle perspective.
100%.
Yeah.
So I bought this place. It was a great place. And I bought it with the intention of worst case scenario, if all else changes, I would still feel comfortable living in it.
Yeah.
Fast forward 4.5 years, I'm actually currently living in that property because of the COVID market.
Yeah.
So I bought it. I rented it out short term, fully furnished for 3 months to a colleague's friend. Covered itself beautifully. It was just a break-even scenario. And then I found another tenant. Same exact same situation, 3 months. Perfect. October hit, tends to slow down in the rental space. Couldn't find a tenant. And I was like, shoot. And I was like, $3,200 or $3,100 a month to carry. What am I going to do? And so I spoke with a couple of people who I knew were doing the Airbnb thing. And I was like, hey, do you have somebody who I can talk to? Picked their brain, did some research, and I actually ended up hiring a property management to run it for me. And next thing you know, I was cash flow positive, anywhere between like $2,000 and $4,000 a month.
Not too shabby.
Exactly.
You recommend hiring like someone that knows what they're doing to manage it?
Yeah, honestly, I do. So the first place that I bought, I used a property manager, made my life so much easier. I'm a big advocate of hiring out people to do what you don't know because they're the expert in their field, which is why, in my opinion, you should always hire a real estate agent to buy real estate. You should always hire somebody to manage your money, have an amazing accountant. The list goes on.
Agreed.
So he helped me manage things, and it was still profitable despite the management fee. And then this past year, I just purchased a ski chalet in Blue Mountain because the Airbnb space there is massive. Same situation. Hired a management company because at the end of the day, I don't want to drive up to Blue Mountain to fix a fridge if it breaks whatever. And still, with their fee involved, at the end of the year, it'll still be a cash flow positive investment. And I get a ski chalet to hang out with a couple times a year.
So both of those things, cash flow positive, you get to like live there because no one's like living there full time. But I also want to mention that one thing that people don't necessarily take into consideration is that a portion of the mortgage that you're paying is principal, and then the other portion is interest. It's usually roughly 50-50, but it depends on the year that you're like actually in of your mortgage.
Yeah.
So if that person's at least covering half, or at least covering the full amount of your mortgage, you're making money.
Exactly.
But if you're making cash flow, now we're talking.
And that's the beautiful thing about Airbnb. It's threefold. You are, maybe right now in certain markets, you're not seeing it, but typically you have the appreciation. And I'm not saying it's overnight success all the time, but 3 to 5, 5 to 10, chances are in the grand scheme of things, you'll come out ahead from an appreciation standpoint. In the case of the Airbnb space, cash flow, and exactly to your point, principal repayment. And so if you can make the down payment happen, furnish it accordingly, find an amazing management team, it's pretty straightforward. Like, I haven't stepped foot in the place since I finished my renovation there in May. And it's just
doing its thing.
Brings me a paycheck every month and keeps it pretty straightforward.
So a lot of people want to start doing this Airbnb property thing.
Yes.
Right? Can you give me we just went through pros. Can you give me a couple cons to it that you've seen?
Yeah. So 3 come to mind. The first one is if you're not planning for mortgage payments to go up, if you're on a variable. So interest rates rise, all of a sudden your monthly payment goes up, that eats into your cash flow. The second thing is planning for your shoulder season. So Blue Mountain, as I'm sure you can imagine, not a lot of people going up in November. It's after the summer season where all the bachelorette parties, the golfing trips, the hiking trails are open. And then you've got the ski season. So November, I think I'm going to make $800 or something like that. It's a bad month.
And not even make because you have to still pay your mortgage and stuff.
Sorry, my gross revenue is $800. So after my management, I'm basically paying for the entire property for the month of November. However, the upswing on that, when you plan for it for the big months, far covers the down months.
So don't spend all of that juicy positive cash flow.
No.
Save it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. And then the third thing is, just being aware that legislation might change. So here in Toronto, Airbnb was crazy. It like basically took over the hotel industry as a whole, which is crazy. And of course, municipality got involved. And now in Toronto, you can only Airbnb your primary residence up to 6 months. So it pretty much completely eliminates that. Now, I know some people who are finding ways around that, as I'm sure you can do. But that's your own risk that you want to take.
Cool.
Yeah. So, it's not for everybody. But at the end of the day, if you set it up properly and you do your due diligence and you do your research and you're patient, chances are it'll work out.
Sweet. Okay. What are some things that you wish you knew before purchasing your Airbnb property?
Yeah. So the thing about me is I'm super conservative in my decision-making process. Like when I bought my watch, as an example, I did research on this thing for like 18 months before I bought it. Like I knew I wanted to buy it. I was like not necessarily at the point financially to do it, but I was like, okay, I'm going to get to this place. And so eventually I did, but I think I tried it on like 8 times before buying it.
Which watch is this?
It's an Omega Speedmaster, which like in the grand scheme of the world of watches, it's like your entry-level luxury watch. Like it's an amazing watch, but it's basic in the sort of world of watches.
Okay.
And I'm like that with most things, like it's wild. But I use that to do my due diligence very thoroughly. And the more expensive something gets, the more time, energy, and effort I put into it. So honestly, with regards to the condo and the ski chalet, I knew everything I was getting into when I got into it. And I thought for me that was important because I didn't want any sort of tough learning lessons. Mm-hmm. I was prepared for the interest rates going up. I was prepared that, hey, in a ski chalet area, maybe short term, I'm actually not going to be able to flip it for a profit from an appreciation standpoint. I knew I wanted to have a management company because I didn't want to put my time into, answering emails at 12:30 trying to help somebody find a key.
Yeah.
So there isn't really 3 things I wish I knew beforehand because I figured those things out ahead of time.
So how can somebody do that for themselves who aren't like as experienced?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's about research. So researching, in Blue Mountain specifically, legislation on what's allowed, talking to people who have done it. The thing I've noticed as I've gotten sort of more experience in this industry, and especially my first couple of years, people love giving free advice if they're good, genuine people. And so if you have a question about something and you see somebody that you admire killing it in that space, call them. Say, hey, listen, I'm so-and-so. I follow you on social media, or send them a DM if it's, more comfortable. Say, hey, listen, I like what you're doing. Do you mind if I pick your brain on this topic? 9 times out of 10, somebody will give you the answer that you're looking for. And then just, again, be patient. Wait for the right opportunity. Watch what something sells for. Okay, check out that floor plan. Okay, this is great. This lines up with what I want. Then go on Airbnb. See what it's renting out for. Check the calendar. Oh, this is booked 80% for this month. This looks like a good investment. And then move forward. February, same thing. Oh, prices are trending here. Okay, this is the shoulder season. And then all of a sudden you've just done all your due diligence so that when it pops up or you find the right opportunity, pull trigger. It's easy. You've already done it.
That's mastery right there. That right there is mastery.
It.
That's the accumulation of 10,000 hours, what you just happen in your brain right there that most people wouldn't even think to do.
Well, I really appreciate that. And again, it doesn't, to the 10,000 hour piece, like it doesn't come easy. It's not a short-term shoot from the hip kind of decision. We're talking about hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. Shouldn't be a spontaneous purchase, my opinion.
Good, yeah, definitely. And I do want to say that what I loved most about that is the whole thing, like good people, especially successful ones, they'll give you 5 minutes,
100%.
Answer a couple questions, 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, 30 if they like you, And it's just about asking. Too many people are afraid of asking these types of things, right?
Yeah. That's the thing I love about the real estate industry is, and again, other industries as well, but I find specifically real estate. So for all the new realtors who are listening, I guarantee you if there's somebody you look up to, they will take your phone call. And if they aren't, maybe revisit why you're looking up to them.
Hey, true. Or just ask another person.
Exactly.
You ask 5 people, one of them will let you.
Very easily.
Okay, let's switch gears here.
Absolutely.
So, one of the most favorite things that I like doing with you is going out to restaurants in the city.
Yes.
So, I wanted to take a moment here to kind of spitball some opinion pieces, that kind of thing, because I've been around the world, and Toronto, I have to say, New York's up there, whatever, but Toronto in such a small area relative, like, because New York, if you want Chinese, you got to go somewhere, and it's 20 minutes away still, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Italian is somewhere over there. Steakhouse is somewhere. It's far.
Yeah.
What I love about Toronto is that in such a small, relatively small metropolitan city, within a walking distance, you can get the best of blank.
Yep.
Any kind of food you could think of.
Yeah, absolutely.
And me and Cody love and going out and trying those different places. We've been to a lot of restaurants together, and I look forward to the future of restaurants to go to.
You're a phenomenal restaurant companion. I'll give you that.
Great. I love that. So, okay, so let's talk a little bit about this. I'm going to spit, these are speedball questions.
I'll throw them out.
All right. So, what's your top 3 favorite established restaurants in the city?
I would say my number 1 is Edulous. It's a tasting restaurant on Niagara. It's like they do 2 seatings a night, 5:30, 8 o'clock, maybe 10 tables. Phenomenal.
Oh, never even heard of this place. What is it called again?
Edulous.
Edulous? What kind of food is it?
So it's like old world European, Spanish, French, Portuguese.
It's on the list. I'm going next week.
Well, so they just got a Michelin star.
Oh.
And they do their reservation book 1 month in advance.
Damn it.
So it's like you got to find that.
I'll make it happen.
Spot. But you will.
I'll find it.
Let's go.
Okay.
I'm down. So Edulous, Mamakas, which we talked about earlier on, and then my last one I would say is Momofuku, which is a bit of a heartbreaking moment for me
They're
because
closing down.
They are.
But they're probably going to move somewhere else in the city, or are they closed down?
I don't know. David Chang has been hit hard through the COVID pandemic side of the space. So I know their lease is up, or apparently their lease is up. So we'll see.
That's something I want to take a quick tangent on, is that I know a lot of very reputable people that are like my mentors. And okay, it's a small sample size, probably like 10 people.
Yeah.
But these people are all not renewing their commercial leases in January, February, March, April of next year.
Yeah.
Really look forward to see what the commercial real estate industry in Toronto, but across North America is going to go down, like what's going to go down there in 2023. Just something I'm very interested in.
Yeah, no, I'm really curious on what that looks like. And I mean, you can see it start to happen right now with new restaurants opening. You've got abandoned storefronts in smaller little areas like Leslieville or Riverdale, and these amazing restaurants popping up because rent is relatively affordable and the space is there. So yeah, I'm also very optimistic.
What are your top 3 up and coming restaurants in the city?
You know what? It's tough to say because I feel like most things in Toronto, if they're up and coming, they're already there. I love Milu. It's on Dundas. It's a great restaurant.
That's on my list.
It's amazing, but
what kind of food is it?
French. Yeah, I'm a big French food guy. But it's one of those things where it may be up and coming, but it's already there. So I actually don't know what like the up and coming spots are, because that's what's amazing about this city. Once something good gets acknowledged, it blows up.
True.
Yeah. So I don't know the answer to that.
Let me think.
What about you? Yeah, I'm curious.
I recently went to this place called Bar Banan on Ossington.
La Banane.
La Banan.
Yeah.
But they have a place upstairs that just opened.
Boom. I'm
called
learning
Bar
something today.
Banan.
Cool.
And I went last week and I like stumbled into it accidentally, a little intoxicated. And
Yeah.
I
That's what it's all
walked up
about.
and they were just like, hey, it's friends and family night because we're soft launch right now.
No way.
So I probably just spilled the beans for them. We'll see when this episode releases.
I love that.
Went there, amazing environment, unreal cocktails, crazy food. I loved it.
Cool. Okay. I'll have
Up
to check
and
it
coming,
out.
I like that spot.
Beautiful.
All right. So I also know that you love traveling. So you must eat great food when you're abroad. If anyone watches Cody's Instagram stories, he does.
It's pretty much all I do when I travel is restaurant.
What's a restaurant that you've seen in another city that you think Toronto should have? Either type of restaurant, vibes, you can even name it.
Yeah, so there's 2 that immediately come to mind. Balthazar in New York. It's just like such an institution. It's such an institution. It gives me like Big Brother vibes to Le Select here, which just reopened in Toronto. But it's on a whole nother level there. So I love Balthazar. It's like, I think what I love most about it is it's just so New York. It's got that like authenticity
Right.
to
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Looks like they just smoked cigarettes in there before in the 90s.
Oh, I'm sure 15 years ago,
Yeah.
darts everywhere. You walk
Yeah.
in and smoke. And then another place also in New York is a place called Charlie Bird. What I love about it, and I think Toronto's kind of missing, is really good, authentic farm-to-table food that's not fussy, but elevated, paired with like an amazing wine program. So it's a wine bar first that also sells amazing food. And in Toronto, for whatever reason, it seems like we've got amazing restaurants with good wine, amazing wine bars with okay food, but it's that like marrying of the two that I think is just so perfect about the place.
Right.
It's like upscale without feeling pretentious, and the wines are amazing at all price points. And they serve wine in Zalto glasses, which if you've ever
is that?
drank from a Zalto glass,
No, what does it look like?
they're like $90 a glass. It's insane.
Oh, it's like a brand of glasses.
A brand of glasses.
Huh.
Yeah, they're handmade, and the stem is like a toothpick, and you feel rich when you're drinking from it. You're just like, this is a $90
This
glass
is
of
nice.
wine.
This is nice.
Like the glass of wine is worth less money than the glass is.
All right, let's talk a little bit about that. What's your favorite cocktail bar in the city?
So I'm not a huge cocktail guy. I'm like the basics, Negroni, margarita, But Gift Shop is amazing. It's if you're on Ossington, across the street from Mamaka's, there's a barber shop next to Bang Bang, or up the street from Bang Bang,
Yeah.
and in the back it's called Gift Shop. It's like a speakeasy.
Also didn't know that either.
Speakeasy style cocktail bar. The guy is actually on TikTok. He's got like 4 or 5 million views on his TikTok account. I would say there is probably one of the top
Why?
spots. Part of the charm is this sort of unknowingness of it, the speakeasy side of it, and it's just super creative what you can get there. So I'd probably say Gift Shop.
Sweet. Asian cuisine, favorite spot in the city.
Oh, I love Asian cuisine. I said Momofuku earlier. It's more like modernized Asian. Pho Thien Tan for, Vietnamese food is phenomenal.
Is that on Ossington?
Also on Ossington.
Is that the pho place?
It's the pho place.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
walk
I
in,
love
it's like,
pho.
yeah, 1980s vibes in there. Pink walls, hasn't been renovated in 30, 40 years. It's amazing. The list goes on. Honestly, like Asian food in general is like of my favorite.
Okay. What's your favorite spot for date night?
We love starting at Queen and Ossington and just walking to Dundas. So like not necessarily any plan, any specific restaurant, just whatever can accommodate two at the bar. That's like a perfect date night for me or for us.
Yeah.
It's amazing that way. So hit Mamaka's, then you can hit Foxley if you want for some also amazing Asian food. Kukla, you've got, unfortunately they don't do it, but Bomer, they did Buckashuk on Tuesdays. The list goes on. And it's a street that continues to blow up. Which I love to see.
My favorite thing for date night is definitely sitting at the bar and just having a conversation with the bartender.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's easily the best part. I'm a big sit at the bar guy.
And recently, like you could literally do that, like start at Queen, make your way.
Yeah.
And every time I go for that walk, there's new restaurants. I'm like, that wasn't there before, was it? And
it's crazy, that street.
Yeah.
Like because I used to work at Mamaka's 6 or 7 years ago.
And really, there was only like 5 restaurants on the street before.
Yeah, it just started to blow up as I was leaving, and
Yeah.
it's amazing to see what happens.
Crazy. Okay.
What's your favorite date night spot before we move on?
Favorite date night spot? Honestly, it's Mamaka's.
Love that. Yeah.
Did they sponsor this this episode? They ought to. Like Mamaka's, give us a free dinner for once.
No
All right,
kidding.
let's go. We spent enough money there.
Yeah.
Okay, what's your favorite spot to go to with the boys?
Oh, I feel like you know this answer. I feel like we've been there together. Barbarians, for sure. Have we?
Barbarians, yes.
We have
for
been
a
there.
steak.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, it's on. I believe it's on Elm.
Yeah.
It's an institution.
Yeah, we went there once for your birthday.
We did. Yeah. Every time I go there, I never leave having a bad time, and easily the best steakhouse in Toronto. No questions asked.
Because I'm Italian, favorite spot to go for Italian food.
So I would say there's a couple. Giulietta right now is absolutely blowing up. Also got a Michelin star, I believe.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
It did.
So there, goes without saying, it's phenomenal. I think one of the sleeper hits that used to be way bigger, I think, than it currently is, which is kind of why I like sort of the low-key current sort of frame of it. Enoteca Sociale, phenomenal. The bucatini alla matriciana, it's the best pasta dish in the city.
Wow, for all the Italian people out there, you see this guy roll his R's? Let's go.
A lot of practice, bud.
Okay. And I'll ask one last thing about Toronto. Toronto private clubs. What's your thoughts on those? Because I know Clio just opened on King.
Yeah.
There's still Soho House. I don't know about the other ones, if they're popping still since the pandemic. Worth it? Overrated? Underrated?
Yeah. Honestly, it's something that I actually have on my list of things to start exploring into 2023. Grow my network, start collaborating with new people. So remains to be seen. That 2 year from now question,
We'll
or
see.
the podcast, I'll answer it. But I think there is a serious place for it. It just remains to be seen on which ones are the best.
All right. So for this season's episode, I'm asking the same question to everyone.
Okay.
At the end of the podcast. Okay.
Okay.
What's one piece of wisdom you wish you knew much sooner?
That's a tough question. Good question. Tough question. It's going to sound so simple, but it's don't sweat the small stuff. I think, especially in my industry, but in general, I think, it's so easy to get worked up with what's going on. If something doesn't go your way, if something doesn't go perfect, if a deal falls apart, if you lose a client, if you have a bad dinner at a restaurant, it's easy to get frustrated or kind of lose your way on that and let it affect you. But I find if I knew, just don't sweat the small stuff early enough, I would have been able to bounce back faster, or I would have been able to learn quicker from it. And at the end of the day, things are going to happen. We can't control what other people do for the most part. We can guide and sort of help accordingly. But I think if we let what other people do affect us, I think it's going to be a big challenge to move forward positively. So don't sweat it. It'll all work out. I think that's what I've learned. I think, in 6.5 years doing what I do, everything happens to work out in one way, shape, or form. Sure, deal didn't close, maintain the relationship. We all need to sell real estate next year. Or, didn't have a good restaurant experience. Oh, well, let's go somewhere else. It'll be an even better experience. So, yeah, just take it easy. Don't stress out. Let it be.
I fucking love that. Thank you, Cody. It's been an amazing time. Thank you, brother.
Pleasure, man. Thank you so much for having me. And anytime you want to chat, let's do it.
Well, this has been What They Did Not Teach You in School. Valentina, the icon behind the camera. Until next time, thank you everyone for listening.